A fool's tongue reveals what his mind tries to hide. In every generation, the same empty phrases echo: pride disguised as strength, fear dressed as confidence. But wisdom listens in silence. A wise man speaks less, and when he does, his words heal, not wound. Why this 9 things stupid men always say. Lesson 1. I don't care what anyone thinks. It sounds powerful. It sounds free. But most men who say this are lying, not to others but to themselves. The truth is they care deeply. They crave validation in secret, hiding behind the armor of indifference. Their rebellion is performance. Their detachment is insecurity in disguise. A truly stoic man does not announce his indifference. He practices it. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." That is the essence of true detachment. Not arrogance, but peace. A wise man cares selectively. He listens to reason, to integrity, to truth. But he ignores noise. The fool tries to convince the world that he's untouched by judgment while secretly living for it. The wise understand that opinions are like weather, always changing, rarely important. You don't need to reject what people think. You need to rise above being controlled by it. When your actions are rooted in principle, not approval, you no longer fear misunderstanding. You move quietly with intention. You stop performing. The world today rewards loudness, constant declaration, constant defense. But the stoic man lives differently. He guards his energy. He speaks less, feels more, observes deeply. He knows that self-control is not a show. It's a quiet rebellion against vanity. So when a man says, "I don't care what anyone thinks," ask yourself, does he live that or does he just say it because he wants to? True confidence doesn't shout. It simply stands. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." The same is true with opinions. It's not what others think, but how much power you give it. Don't reject people. Reject dependency. Don't avoid judgment, outgrow it. And above all, and remember, a wise man doesn't pretend to be free. He simply is. Lesson 2. I don't need help. It angers the battle cry of the proud and the broken, the anthem of men drowning quietly beneath their own armor. I don't need help. It sounds noble, independent, strong. But beneath the tone of defiance lies exhaustion. A man repeating these words often isn't powerful. He's scared. Scared to be seen. Scared to be small. Scared to be human. The Stoics taught that strength is not isolation. It is the disciplined acceptance of reality. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "When you have trouble getting out of bed in the morning, remember, you were born to work with others." Even the Emperor of Rome, master of millions, understood, no man conquers the world alone. But we, in the modern world, have confused pride with peace. We confuse emotional numbness with control. We tell ourselves we can handle it as we crumble behind closed doors. We mistake silence for strength and self-destruction for discipline. A foolish man says, "I don't need help." A wise man says, "I can stand alone, but I'm not afraid to reach out." Stoicism is not emotional detachment. It is emotional mastery. It's not closing off, but knowing when to open. A stoic man does not suppress his humanity. He refines it. He knows that admitting struggle does not weaken him. It frees him. Seneca once wrote, "No man is more unhappy than he who never faces adversity, for he is not permitted to prove himself." To ask for help is not to surrender, but to evolve. It's to recognize that the mind, like the body, sometimes needs support, guidance, or healing. But modern men grow up fearing vulnerability, raised on phrases like, "man up," or "deal with it." We inherit the belief that to feel is to fail, and so we build fortresses around our hearts, fortresses that become prisons. The Stoic man builds no prison for his emotions. He builds a temple, a place where he studies them, controls them, and uses them as tools for virtue. You don't have to face every storm alone. Sometimes the bravest act is not to fight harder, but to ask, "Can you stand with me for a moment?" It takes courage to fight alone, but it takes greater courage to admit that you don't have to. So let the fool boast that he needs no one. Let him wear his solitude like armor. You will walk another path. The path of reason, the path of balance, the path of quiet strength that listens, learns, and grows. Because the truth is simple. Even the strongest tree still needs roots. Even the sharpest sword still needs sharpening. And even the wisest man still needs wisdom beyond his own. Epictetus said, "No great thing is created suddenly. Neither is a strong man. He is forged through connection, with truth, with others, with his higher self." So the next time your pride whispers, "I don't need help," pause. Ask yourself if it's pride or fear speaking. Because the man who refuses help refuses growth. And the Stoic man, the truly free man, seeks not to prove he can do everything alone, but to master the art of knowing when to ask and when to stand. Lesson 3. It's not my fault. The easiest words to say, and the hardest ones to outgrow. It's not my fault. They sound harmless, reasonable, logical even. But behind those words hides a quiet surrender. A man handing over his power to circumstance. The Stoics would call that a tragedy of self-abandonment. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." Yet most men live as if life is happening to them, not through them. They complain, they blame, they react, they point to the world, their boss, their partner, their parents, their past, and say, "This is why I'm broken." But a Stoic man does not build excuses. He builds endurance. He knows that pain will visit him. Injustice will test him. Others will betray him. But he also knows he remains the final gatekeeper of how he responds. The man who blames loses twice, first to the event itself, and second to his own refusal to grow from it. Blame is a drug. It numbs us from responsibility. It gives us temporary relief from guilt while secretly feeding our weakness. You can feel it in modern life, in arguments online, in relationships that fall apart, in the culture of outrage and finger-pointing. We want someone to be at fault because it's easier than facing our own reflection. Seneca said, "We suffer more often in imagination than in reality." When we blame, we imagine a world where we are powerless, victims of luck and circumstance. But reality is sharper. We are always choosing how to see, how to react, how to rise. A foolish man says, "It's not my fault," when things fall apart. A wise man asks, "What part of this is within my control?" He knows that even when he cannot control the situation, he can control his posture within it. He can control his thoughts, his breath, his next move. And that is the ground where freedom begins. Modern life tempts us to outsource responsibility, to say we're stressed because of work, angry because of someone's disrespect, empty because of society. But the Stoic path cuts through the noise. Your peace is your responsibility. Your reaction, your recovery, your rebirth, all yours. There's power in ownership. When you stop saying, "It's not my fault," and start saying, "I choose my response," you begin to reclaim every piece of your strength. That's when adversity becomes a teacher. That's when heartbreak becomes fuel. That's when pain becomes your greatest sculptor. Blame keeps you in chains. Ownership makes you unshakable. A Stoic man looks at every challenge and says, "This is mine to face," not because he caused it, but because he has the strength to transform it. So the next time life wounds you, resist the urge to point outward. Stand still. Look inward. Ask yourself, what is this trying to make me see? And when you rise with quiet control. Because a man who no longer blames is no longer enslaved by circumstance. He becomes what the Stoics called autarkes, self-sufficient, self-commanding, at peace. The world can crash, people can betray, fortune can turn, but he remains still, because his strength no longer depends on fairness. It depends on discipline, and that, brother, is where wisdom begins. Lesson 4. I don't care what people think. Every man says it. Few truly live it. I don't care what people think. It sounds bold, defiant, free. But most of the time, it's a shield, not strength. A wall built by a wounded ego, not a liberated soul. The Stoics never said to ignore others completely. They said to order your values, to care deeply about what is right, and care little about what is shallow. Epictetus once said, "If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Meaning, peace isn't found in reputation, it's found in integrity. The problem is, modern life runs on validation, likes, views, attention. We're raised to perform, not to live. To be seen, not to be still. So when someone says, "I don't care what people think," they're often still performing, for themselves. It's rebellion dressed as confidence, but born from insecurity. The Stoic version sounds quieter. I will not let other people's opinions disturb my peace. That's different. That's self-mastery. Because it means you still listen, but you choose what to keep. You still observe, but you refuse to absorb. There's wisdom in caring less, but there's danger in pretending not to care at all. The man who truly doesn't care loses empathy. The man who cares too much loses himself. The Stoic finds balance, caring about virtue, not vanity. Marcus Aurelius faced the full weight of judgment, emperor, leader, philosopher. Yet he wrote, "We all love ourselves more than other people, but care more about their opinions than our own." He saw how absurd it was that we hand over our inner calm to the shifting moods of strangers. So he trained himself to focus inward. He reminded himself that fame fades, criticism passes, and truth endures. You too must do the same, because in this age of noise, where everyone has something to say, your peace will depend on selective deafness. You must learn to hear without absorbing, to see without reacting, to feel without losing ground. True confidence doesn't shout. It doesn't need to prove indifference. It walks silently through the noise, unbothered by applause or insult. That's Stoic composure. Calm not because it's numb, but because it's anchored. So don't chase the illusion of not caring. Care deeply, just not about the wrong things. Care about your discipline. Care about your values. Care about the kind of man you're becoming when no one's watching. Because at the end of the day, the world forgets, opinions fade, and judgment shifts. But your integrity, that's eternal. Don't say, "I don't care what people think." Say instead, "Their noise doesn't decide my direction." That's not apathy. That's command. That's how a Stoic walks through chaos without losing peace. Lesson 5. I deserve more. It's a modern mantra, a phrase tattooed on ambition, whispered in frustration, posted in captions. I deserve more. But the Stoic looks closer and sees a trap. Because often when a man says, "I deserve more," he's not speaking from discipline or purpose, but from ego, from the ache of comparison, from the illusion that the world owes him something just for existing. Seneca warned against this disease of the soul. It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more, who is poor. You see, the world doesn't owe us more peace, more love, more success, more validation. It owes us nothing. And that's exactly why the Stoic finds freedom, because he stops demanding and starts creating. Entitlement is a thief. It steals gratitude. It makes a man blind to what he already has: his breath, his mind, his strength, his potential. It makes him restless in every season. Even when life is good, he feels cheated. Even when love is given, he feels underappreciated. But the disciplined man, he builds quietly. He doesn't demand the universe to serve him. He earns alignment through effort. He knows that everything gained through patience holds more weight than anything seized through ego. In the modern world, this lesson feels radical. Every message you see tells you to want more, chase more, deserve more, as if peace itself is a prize you can win. But the Stoic knows, peace begins when you stop negotiating with life. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." He meant that instead of complaining about what you lack, you turn it into fuel. Instead of waiting for more, you make the moment enough. When a man believes he deserves more love, he becomes bitter. When he believes he deserves more wealth, he becomes reckless. When he believes he deserves more recognition, he becomes lost. But when he believes he deserves nothing, yet still gives everything, he becomes unstoppable. Because gratitude sharpens discipline, and humility multiplies strength. This doesn't mean you shouldn't aim higher. The Stoic pursues excellence, but he detaches from entitlement. He works hard without demanding reward. He loves deeply without expecting perfection. He serves without shouting and grows without announcing. Ask yourself, would you still give your best if no one ever noticed? Would you still pursue mastery if no one ever praised you? If the answer is yes, then you are free, because your worth is no longer chained to reward. Epictetus said, "Don't seek for everything to happen as you wish it, but wish for everything to happen as it actually does. Then your life will flow well." It's not resignation. It's harmony. It's the end of argument with the universe. So next time you whisper, "I deserve more," pause. Turn that sentence into, "I'll become more." Because the Stoic knows, the universe owes you nothing, but it will reflect your discipline back to you. And when you finally stop demanding from life, life begins to give you peace instead of noise. Lesson 6. That's just who I am. It is one of the most dangerous phrases a person can repeat, not because it is evil, but because it's lazy. That's just who I am. A sentence that shuts the door on growth, a shield for pride, a quiet declaration that change is too much effort. The Stoics would see this as the language of surrender, not the noble kind, but the kind that keeps a person imprisoned by their own habits. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." The fool takes this quote and applies it to the world. The wise man applies it to himself. Because the truth is this: you are not fixed. You are fluid. You are not chained to your past, only to your refusal to confront it. Every reaction, every pattern, every emotional reflex can be reshaped through awareness and discipline. But the phrase, "that's just who I am," kills that possibility. It convinces you that your flaws are personality traits instead of weaknesses to be refined. The man who always loses his temper says, "That's just who I am." The one who avoids responsibility says, "That's just who I am." The one who fears vulnerability, who runs from discomfort, who repeats the same mistakes and calls it fate. They all hide behind the same illusion, that identity is permanent. But Stoicism teaches the opposite. It teaches that identity is a process, a forge, not a label. Each day you are reshaped by what you choose to tolerate, what you practice, and what you avoid. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." To master yourself, you must stop defending the parts of you that destroy your peace. It's not humility to stay the same. It's fear disguised as acceptance. Think about how often people repeat their stories. "I'm just bad with people. I've never been disciplined. I've always had anger issues. I can't focus." Each repetition becomes a chain link, strong, comfortable, familiar. But the Stoic cuts through it with self-honesty. Seneca wrote, "Most powerful is he who has himself in his own power." To have yourself means to question yourself and to ask, is this reaction useful? Is this belief helping or hindering me? Imagine a man standing before a mirror, looking not at his face, but at his behavior. He watches how he argues, how he envies, how he avoids. He doesn't excuse it by saying, "That's who I am." He studies it like a sculptor studies the marble, searching for the piece within that S waiting to emerge. The modern world tells you to be yourself. The Stoic adds, but only after you've built yourself. Because who you are now is just a starting point, not a destiny. You don't need to be perfect to evolve, and you just need to be honest. Honest enough to say, "This version of me isn't final." That sentence alone changes everything. It replaces "that S who I am" with that S who I am becoming. And from that moment, progress begins. The fool hides behind identity. The wise use it as clay. They know that character isn't inherited, it's constructed. That temperament isn't fate, it's practice. That personality isn't truth, it's habit. So the next time your mind says, "That's just who I am," ask yourself, is that wisdom or weakness talking? Because the Stoic knows, the person you defend today might be the very thing that limits your peace tomorrow. You are allowed to rewrite your nature. In fact, that's what nature demands: transformation. Remember this: every time you choose discipline over impulse, patience over anger, reflection over reaction, you are building someone new. You are proving that your past has no final say. So stop saying, "That's just who I am." Start saying, "This is who I'm learning to be." Because in the end, the man who refuses to evolve dissolves. But the one who faces himself becomes something greater, not just changed, but complete. Lesson 7. It's not my fault. Few phrases poison the soul like this one. It's not my fault. It sounds harmless, reasonable even, a simple defense against pain. But beneath those 4 words hides the slow decay of self-mastery. Because when you say, "It's not my fault," what you're really saying is, "I have no power." You give away the steering wheel of your life, to circumstance, to luck, to the cruelty of others. The Stoics called this the death of agency. Epictetus once said, "It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters." He wasn't dismissing suffering. He was teaching power, the kind that doesn't need permission from the world to rise again. Modern minds love to cling to blame. We build identities around it. I'm like this because of my parents, because of my past, because they left, because life's unfair, and maybe all of it is true. Maybe life did deal you cruelty, betrayal, or neglect. But the Stoic knows, truth alone doesn't heal. Ownership does. Blame is emotional quicksand. The more you justify your pain, the deeper you sink into it. You may be right, but you'll still be stuck. Because being right doesn't free you, responsibility does. The fool waits for apologies that never come. The wise reclaim control through response, not resentment. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events." That is not comfort, it is command. It means no one can decide how long you stay broken but you. We all face betrayal, we all get hurt, we all have people who scar us. But the Stoic refuses to let those moments become permanent definitions. He transforms his pain into philosophy. His scars become instruction, not identity. When a man says, "It's not my fault," he's saying, "I can't change it." When he says, "It happened, but I'm responsible for how I move forward," he's saying, "I am free." Seneca once wrote, "A man is as miserable as he believes himself to be." That's not cruelty. That's clarity. Because misery ends the moment you decide to stop feeding it. The truth is, not everything is your fault, but everything is your responsibility. Your healing, your growth, your reaction, your peace. Those belong to you, no matter what others did. There's a quiet strength that forms when you stop needing revenge, or closure, or explanations. It's the power of self-governance, when you say, "I own my response. I shape my outcome." Most people are prisoners of their stories. They replay old chapters as proof of why they can't move forward. But Stoicism burns the script. It teaches you to write again. When you release blame, you reclaim direction. You stop being the wounded and start becoming the warrior. So yes, maybe it wasn't your fault. Maybe you were betrayed, misled, or broken by something beyond your control. But from this moment onward, your peace is your responsibility, and that realization alone separates the free from the frustrated. Because the Stoic understands, you cannot rewrite the past, but you can rewrite your relationship with it, and that is how strength is born. Lesson 8. They don't deserve my forgiveness. Those words are heavy. They don't deserve my forgiveness. They sound strong. They sound righteous. They sound like protection, but often they are a prison disguised as armor. Forgiveness is one of the most misunderstood powers in the world. People think it's mercy for others, when in truth it's liberation for the self. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike your enemy." And what he meant was simple. You win not by retaliating, but by refusing to carry their poison any longer. When someone wounds you deeply, your mind wants to hold on to it, replaying the scene, analyzing the words, keeping the anger alive as proof that you were wronged. But over time, anger turns into identity. You begin to define yourself by what happened, not by what you became afterward. And that's when the soul begins to rot, quietly, invisibly. The Stoic understands that forgiveness has nothing to do with permission. You don't forgive because they deserve peace. You forgive because you do. It's the act of refusing to let pain dictate your inner weather. Seneca said, "He who suffers before it is necessary, suffers more than is necessary." When you cling to resentment, you're choosing to suffer twice, once from the action and forever from the memory. Modern life amplifies this pain. People parade betrayal on social media. They build walls of sarcasm to hide heartbreak. They claim detachment, but they're still chained to resentment. The Stoic doesn't deny the wound. He simply refuses to let it become his worldview. Forgiveness in Stoic eyes isn't forgetting. It's understanding. It's seeing clearly. This person acted from ignorance, weakness, or pain, and choosing not to mirror their blindness. It's saying, "I will not become the thing that broke me." It's not softness, it's self-respect. Because when you forgive, you reclaim your power to focus. You redirect the energy once trapped in bitterness into something stronger: creation, discipline, growth. Marcus wrote in his Meditations, "When you wake each morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and I recognize that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own." He wasn't excusing the world's cruelty. He was preparing his heart not to shatter under it. You cannot control who hurts you, but you can control what happens next. Will their darkness stay with you, echoing inside your thoughts? Or will you release it and finally breathe freely again? Forgiveness is not agreement. It's closure without permission. It's saying, "You don't deserve space in my mind anymore." There's a peace that arrives only when you stop explaining why you're angry. When you no longer need the world to understand your pain, you become untouchable. Forgiveness doesn't make you weak. It proves you've outgrown the need to be fueled by resentment. Epictetus taught, "When someone does you wrong, immediately consider what view of good or evil led him to it. When you see this, you will pity him and not be angry." That's the highest form of forgiveness: empathy without attachment, understanding without entanglement. So when your mind whispers, "They don't deserve my forgiveness," answer quietly, "I deserve my peace," because the moment you let go, you stop carrying their chaos. And the silence that follows isn't weakness, it's healing. The Stoic knows that peace is not found in vengeance, but in victory over self. And forgiveness, quiet, steady, unseen, is that victory. Lesson 9. I don't need anyone. At first those words sound powerful. I don't need anyone. They echo like defiance, a shield against disappointment. But underneath that declaration often lies exhaustion, not strength. It's not independence. It's self-protection disguised as pride. Modern life worships the lone wolf. We glorify isolation as proof of power. We post quotes about not needing anyone, yet deep down we ache for connection that feels safe, honest, and real. The Stoic doesn't confuse detachment with disconnection. He understands, strength is not about rejecting people, it is about not being ruled by them. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Human beings are made for cooperation, like feet, like hands, like eyelids." Even the Emperor of Rome, surrounded by wealth, soldiers, and solitude, knew that we are designed for connection. But modern ego hates the idea of need. Because to need feels like weakness. To depend feels like exposure. And so we withdraw, pretending we're above it. Yet isolation rarely leads to peace. More often it becomes a quiet suffocation. When you cut yourself off from others out of fear, what you call independence becomes loneliness in disguise. True Stoic strength is different. It's interdependence. The ability to stand firm in solitude, but to connect without losing yourself. Seneca once said, "No one can live happily who has regard to himself alone and transforms everything into a question of his own utility." In other words, we grow by serving, by sharing, by being part of something greater than our ego. It is not weakness to lean on others. It is wisdom to recognize that no one endures alone. But here's the paradox. The more whole you become, the less you cling to people, and the more deeply you can love them. Because you're not using them to fill your emptiness. You're sharing your completeness. A Stoic doesn't isolate out of pride. He learns solitude to master self-awareness. He spends time alone not to reject the world, but to prepare to engage with it with clarity. He doesn't say, "I don't need anyone." He says, "I'm at peace with or without anyone." That difference changes everything. Modern strength is loud, built on posturing and indifference. Stoic strength is silent, built on understanding and self-control. One builds walls, the other builds discipline. Epictetus taught that we must train our minds to be self-sufficient, but not selfish. To be content within ourselves so that when we connect with others it comes from choice, not dependency. He said, "The key is to keep company only with people who uplift you, whose presence calls forth your best. Not because we don't need anyone, but because we must choose the right ones." So when someone proudly declares, "I don't need anyone," remember, that's often the voice of someone who's been hurt, not healed. It's not strength to close your heart. It's courage to open it again without losing yourself. The Stoic walks the middle path, alone but not lonely, independent but compassionate, self-reliant but never numb. He knows that needing no one is not a virtue, it's a reaction. But choosing to walk alone until connection becomes meaningful, that's mastery. And so if you ever find yourself whispering, "I don't need anyone," pause, breathe. You don't need everyone, but you need truthful connection. Because even the strongest tree still needs the soil, the rain, the sun, and even the strongest soul still needs the warmth of understanding. Peace isn't found in proving yourself. It's found in mastering yourself. Let others fight for noise. You fight for stillness. Walk through life calm, grounded, untouchable. Because when you no longer chase validation or defend your ego, you finally realize true strength was silence all along.